please explain your role. Thank you.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. I'm our Honorable Chief Guest. I'll be the counter. I'll be collecting all your awes and downs throughout the speech. That includes topics, table topics, and also in the speaking. In addition to that, I'll be counting all your speech from now on. I'll give you the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Godam. You'll be doing a lot of tracking this morning. Hope you're okay with that. Yes, you'll also be a word master. Thank you.
Once again, fellow Toastmasters, good morning. I'll be the word master of the day. I'll share the word of the day today in the chat. I'll be counting whether can use the word in the speech or not. I'll give you the report at the end. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Godam. And then we have Wai-Ming as our timer.
Yes, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, I'm the timer today. So I'll be operating this clock, which is in one of your windows when you go into grid view. And for the prepared speeches of 5 to 7 minutes, 5 minutes, the green light come on, 6 minutes, the yellow, and then the red light comes on the 7, and you have 30 seconds finish. Evaluation at 2 to 3 minutes, and then table topics at 1 to 2 minutes. If there's a word, then I can say something. Otherwise, I'm going to assume I said the word. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. And we'll have Zanya as our grammarian.
Yes, thank you very much, Jose. So my name is Zaina, and I'll be working as the grammarian today, looking for the proper use of the English language. I'll point out both exceptional use and moments in time when perhaps we could use the English language better. Thank you.
Other person with multiple roles is Harun. Harun will also be our ballot counter and theater master.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters. I will be the out counter.
A ballot counter.
I see.
Ballot.
Yeah.
And then
I will be
the master.
Yeah, I will be the ballot count. I will be the ballot counter for today. Once the speeches are over, I will be sending out a link to all of you on our chat window, which will take you to a Google Forms, and you can fill in for your best voter, best speaker, best evaluator, and best table topic master. And thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Harun. And so we go to our preferred speeches. Our first speaker will be Louis. Louis is been with us for a few weeks now as one of our new members, and so I didn't get his speech, but he makes speeches on a variety of topics, very interesting topics. And let's raise our hands for Louis.
Thank you, Jose. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and honorable guests. In honor of today's theme of fun things to watch on television, I wanted to pay homage to the Golden State Warriors and being this close in the play-in games to make it to the NBA playoffs. They had 2 unfortunate close losses to the Lakers and Grizzlies within a 5-point differential, but it's hard to fault them with so many injuries that they had. As you all know from my icebreaker speech, I'm a huge LA Lakers fan, and I'm so relieved we luckily beat the Warriors with 3 points with, a LeBron step back 3 that shouldn't have gone in. But regardless, what I want to say about this topic today is that even though the Warriors lost, they're a spectacle to see. To put that in perspective, the Warriors and Lakers play-in game was the highest viewed game since the 2019 NBA Finals. And so if you think about that, that's pretty insane that this play-in game to get into the playoffs was more viewed than last year's 2020 NBA Finals. And so today, I just want to give my thoughts on why the Warriors are so fun and special to watch. So you can't talk about fun and the Warriors without talking about Stephen Curry. That guy is a living cheat code. He can shoot absurd amount of threes from 3-point, 4-point, or 4 feet, 5 feet range. And, it's a good shot for him. And for other players, it's a stupid shot, but for him, it's like a layup. And not only that, he gets double teamed or triple teamed every single time he shoots those threes, because Klay Thompson's not on floor to, have other defenders go and defend him. And so Curry's taking these contested long threes, and it's a sight to see. You'll never see a player like that again in history. And so with that, I would say that Stephen Curry will probably finish as the greatest shooter ever, and will finish with the most threes by the end of his career. And what also makes the Warriors and Curry so special is because Curry is such a likable guy. When he plays basketball, it's so like goofy and lackadaisical. He's always smiling and laughing, and even himself, he realizes that his shot is ridiculous. Like, by no means should it go in, and he realizes that. And then he'll like do this little shimmy shake in front of all the other players to taunt them, but other players don't fault him for that. They just know that he's great, and so that's one of the reasons why the Warriors are Showtime. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the Warriors have a player named Draymond Green, and I would say he's the opposite of Curry in that he's a terrible shooter. He kind of like hunches over and like shoots like this. It just doesn't look pretty at all. But what he does have is that he's a premier defender. He's undersized for a big man at 6'6" and only weighs 230 pounds, but he's guarding guys, centers that are 7 foot tall, 280 pounds. And so what you got to respect about Draymond as either a fan or just a NBA watcher, a casual viewer, is that he plays his heart and soul out each game. And, you can't fault a guy for that. And also kind of opposite of Curry is that he's so unlikable that you have to watch him. It's because every game you don't know how he's going to behave. He yaps to the refs. He yaps to other players, trash talking to them, throwing F-bombs. And he even yells at his own teammates. And they're like, what the heck, dude? I'm on your own team. Like, why are you yelling at me? But regardless, you need a player like that in Draymond Green because he brings this passion and emotion to the team. And that he will stand up for you if you get into any trouble with other players. It's like you hate him, but you also love him. And as a viewer, it's like you love to see that in an NBA player just giving their heart and soul out each day. And so lastly, why the Warriors are so special to watch this year is, I hate to say it, the last 7 years, you guys had it special or had it easy. You had a super team. You had Kevin Durant, Iguodala, healthy Klay Thompson. And so, for a while, the game started to become a little stale because there wasn't that factor of predictability or the factor of unpredictability anymore. It was expected that the Warriors would just win. And so I myself just became disinterested because the Warriors like, 73 record, 6 losses. It's like, oh, that's, you expect that from them. But now that they don't have Kevin Durant or Klay Thompson, Iguodala, and they have to mix in all these like new role players, these rookies, these guys from the G League, what they did this season was incredible. And you can't really hate on them for that because they're finally underdogs again for the last year or so. And what they did was highly commendable, that they made it up into the 9th or 10th seed when the expectations were that they're supposed to fall to the bottom 3 in the NBA. So all in all, what I'm trying to get at is that despite all the injuries, the Warriors are still must-see TV with a prolific shooter like Curry on the floor and a tenacious player like Draymond. And even if you're not a basketball fan, even if you don't follow it closely, I would highly recommend watching a game or two next year because you're witnessing history here in that you have this We Believe team. You got Curry, you got Klay that's coming back, and you have Steve Kerr. It's like this is your one chance to watch this team because they're getting old and you might not see them for the next couple of years. And like I said, it's Curry's going to go down as the greatest shooter ever. And why you can trust me on why you should watch the Warriors, because like I said, I'm a huge Lakers fan and it hurts me to say this, but I love watching the Warriors just as much as I love watching the Lakers. And so I appreciate everyone's time. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Thank you, Louis. That was a very good speech. Brings back excitement. Excited for watching basketball. Yes, that's something fun to watch. Let's give ourselves a minute or so to send Louis a private chat. We'll give him feedback on his speech. Thank you. A reminder to everyone, our word for today is in chat. It's wholesome, right? It's wholesome. Warrior deserve compliments, right? Even fulsome compliments, they deserve it because they worked hard. It is a testimony to hard work. Thank you for giving Louis feedback. Our next speaker is a longtime member. She's has her presentation already set up. Everybody see that, right? So this will be another financial advice, looks like it, from Georgie. Let's raise our hands for Georgie. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'd like to talk about a book I just completed called Money, The True Story of a Made-Up Thing. It's by Jacob Goldstein. He's the co-host of a business podcast called Planet Money. He has also worked as a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and the Miami Herald. The book is fascinating because it talks about what money is, not just as the concept of using it as a currency, but more importantly, the way human beings have kind of created the concept of what money is. So, for example, obviously we think of money as a medium of exchange in a way that we can value objects, value goods and services. But more importantly, we tend to think of it as something someone would consider valuable. For example, in the olden days, maybe you valued shells or cattle, or maybe you created a type of currency out of a physical good that you valued, like gold or silver. All of those things make sense. Nowadays, we obviously don't have that. We instead pass around maybe pieces of paper, or maybe not even that. Nowadays, we have fiat money. What that is it's a government issued currency that is not backed by any physical commodity, but by the stability of the issuing government, the stability or maybe the lack of stability of the issuing government, that is. As with most things, our concept of money started in China. So as I said, you start off with something that you considered a store of value in order so you'd pass that around. And so you didn't have to carry bushels of grain with you or bags of salt. That was great. So it's all whatever a group of people have socially considered to be acceptable as money. In China, back in the olden days, they had money that was a variety of things, but a lot of it involved iron and heavy items that had to be hauled from place to place. You can imagine trying to do your shopping this way was exhausting. They came up with a quick way, kind of at a grassroots level, to make life easier. Instead of dragging all this heavy money with them, you would instead leave it with a trusted merchant. The merchant would then give you some sort of like piece of paper or maybe a piece of leather or something that said, yes, you have left this much of this currency with me. And then you could use it kind of like IOUs as you went from place to place to do your shopping. This was turned into a more formalized arrangement over time and eventually turned into a paper money big in the Song Dynasty. the real advantage to something like this was that it increased the amount of money that was available. So suddenly a lot more people were becoming wealthy. Unfortunately, one of the emperors in the dynasty decided, hey, I'm getting tired of all this paper stuff. Let's instead bring it down so we don't have paper. We'll just go back to trading these heavy coins again. They did, and people got a lot poorer. It all changed under Genghis Khan. He decided, we're going to go back to this paper money concept, but I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to print the money. I'm going to guarantee the authenticity of this currency. And he even came up with an incredible, fulsome way of making sure that everybody accepted this currency. He said, if you don't trust this currency, if you don't accept it as payment, if you prefer to use something like gold or silver, well, I have a solution for that. We're going to kill you. So you either trust this or you die. An amazing, fulsome way to inspire people to use currency. And it really did work. So as a result, paper money became the way things were done in China. This kind of happened as well in the United States. We had lots of banks in the early 1800s were allowed to print their own money. So in the 1820s, there were 8,370 different types of bills and currency floating around, all calling themselves the US dollar. You can imagine what merchants felt like. It was a nightmare to try to figure out which one of these differently printed bills was actual currency and which wasn't. How could they trust it? It was for a bank from another state. What they did was they published these thick volumes of books that were banknote periodicals that would say what was real currency, and more importantly, even if somebody handed you a US dollar, you might not trust the bank that issued it. So you might only give them 50 cents on the dollar. All of this information had to be shared by the merchants to know what was real money and what wasn't. So nowadays, we have a different form of currency, and people are once again saying to themselves, is this actual money? I mean, what's it based on? Once again, it's kind of not based on anything but what is socially acceptable. This is nowadays cryptocurrency, and the granddaddy of cryptocurrency is Bitcoin. I hope I'm not triggering anyone this morning with this image of the Bitcoin chart. Yes, it's been a little rough in the last few weeks. Just breathe, just breathe. I'm not suggesting you buy Bitcoin. I'm not suggesting you sell Bitcoin. I'm not suggesting you do anything with any of the cryptocurrencies. But the point is that this is a type of currency that is flowing through the area now. Will Bitcoin be the currency of the future? I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows at this point. But it's possible it could be. It's possible another cryptocurrency might be the currency of the future. Or it might be that some of the governments find their own currency in a crypto format. There are three things I'd like to point out about Bitcoin, especially as far as something to consider with respect to the concept of currency. There is right now a lot of lack of transparency from the government's point of view of knowing what's going on. They want to lock it down. There is also the concept of environmental damage, something that Elon Musk has brought up. This Bitcoin especially can be very detrimental to the environment, the amount of energy required in order to use it. Also, people think that the government can't control the currency. That's not actually true. Looking back into the 1930s, Roosevelt issued Executive Order 6102. That confiscated all the gold that was out there. American citizens, foreigners in the United States weren't allowed to use gold. In other words, you never can tell what's going to happen. I thought this book did a really good job of looking at currency, money, and how we use it. It's 5.5 hours long, and if you got a chance, I suggest you get a chance to go through it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Georgie, for that insight on the origins of money. Interesting. Everybody, please send a quick chat feedback to Georgie in regards to what you think of her speech. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the feedback. And now we go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Elvira. She's a new member, and this will be her first speech as a member. She's already been with another Toastmasters club, so she doesn't have to do the intro anymore, the icebreaker. But looking forward to hearing her speech. Let's see her speech style, everybody. Let's raise our hands for Elvira.
Good morning, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. I guess there are, yes, aren't they? I'm a new person for your club, and normally a procedure for a person like me would be to deliver an icebreaker speech where I could introduce myself. But as Jose mentioned, I'm not a total newbie to the Toastmasters, and today I'm going to do my level 3 project called Connect with Storytelling, which it is part of my effective coaching pathway. And I hope that through this project, I still connect some of icebreaker as well and introduce myself to the club at the same time and connect with storytelling with you. Have you ever heard Steve Jobs' 2005 speech at Stanford University's commencement? Just in case. Someone? No? Oh, great. So there are actually people that, yeah, it's quite, I guess, a famous speech of his where he shares his story, the story of his life, and particularly the first part when he says about connecting the dots. So today I'm going to share my story of connecting the dots. My story is about my country as well, actually. I was born in the former Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic. Probably you might remember that there had been a few of them in the Soviet country. And I was born in the space race era between the USSR and the US. You might also remember of this time. Since I was 10-year old, I had been pursuing a dream of to become a part of the space exploration program. And it was so fascinating that I decided to become an engineer. But while I was doing my engineering degree, which were the years at the university were concurrent with the 19th, where the country I was born in disappeared. And I had to change my plans for my life. Unfortunately, I gave up my engineering career as I believed that there would be no use of engineers anymore. Remember, I was going through the major changes in the country. There was no room for, unfortunately, for engineers, so that not much room for engineers. I tried myself in different jobs such as logistics and finance, and actually didn't suit me much, unfortunately. But maybe it's good act now, I think. And that's why. By 2008, I decided to go into psychology and counseling. And from then on, I realized that actually that is it. That was it. And that's exactly what I needed. Even if I was absolutely sure that the country I was living in, the USSR, had to go through the changes and establish democracy because it was doomed to collapse with all these artificial things created within the country. And still, I didn't realize how much mess created in my own life, these historic changes. And that's why I went through this mess to redefine what happened to me. And from then on, I've done this work, huge work of reframing and redefining meaning of what happened to me. Change of my career path, change priorities in my life. Now I help people to connect the dots, because you don't have to necessarily to go through the changes like me, like I've gone through it. But yet people sometimes face challenges, adversities, when they have to redefine what happened to them, from the bad things happen to them, from the unhappiness they are experiencing now, to something more meaningful. And I believe that we are challenged. When we are challenged, we have an enormous power to connect the dots, to make our life whole again, meaningful again, and all the adversities, go through all the adversities and become stronger, may have fulsome happiness and health. And health. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvira. Your life experiences. Thank you for sharing that. It's very interesting. Let's give ourselves a minute or so to give feedback to Elvira in regards to her speech. Thank you. And now we go to the evaluation phase of our meeting. And to do that, it will be Haroon. Haroon will be our general evaluator. Take it away, Haroon. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Our first evaluator of the day is Zaina, who will be evaluating Louis. Go ahead, Zaina.
Thank you, Haroon. So, Louis, I was excited to hear your speech this week. I think you have an incredibly personable way of talking. It makes you very relatable. It makes you very easy to listen to. So I think that's fantastic. I also really appreciated a lot of your body movements. The shimmy shake in particular, I thought was really nice. Again, adding to that personable character, it makes you really likable as a speaker on stage. Some things that I had as potential improvements is a lot of your speech was very technical in the terms of basketball. There were a lot of names being thrown out. There were a lot of terms being thrown out that, unless you were already involved in the world of basketball, would not have been obvious. Like contested long threes is one that I wrote down. Like I technically kind of know what that is, but like I could tell you like it's a long three that somebody contested, you know? So being aware that your audience might not have the same knowledge level of you, I think could be really important. I could see a lot of people nodding along as you were talking. And so I think for the people who knew what was happening, they were totally with you and engaged. I just think you could have left a lot of people in the dust. And with regards to that, a potential suggestion I have would be to either consider making a PowerPoint where you could, put up the pictures of the players and make it really clear who you're talking about and what numbers are connected to that particular player in comparison to other players of the past. That would be really useful. Giving me a number that says, he's done 57 X's isn't really useful to me if I don't know that everyone else normally does 23 of them, right? My other thought there is the other option you have is to do it more story style. So bring me through the story of Curry's life and make other people characters inside of that story. Or tell me the story of the Warriors and not bother telling me the names of the actual characters themselves, just consider them to be like team members generically. You also said despite all the injuries, and I did not know they had any injuries. So that was mildly confusing to me as well. But in general, though, I loved watching you talk about something you were really excited and passionate about. It's cool to see you light up. It makes other people light up. There were definitely audience members who were really excited by what you were saying. You had a particularly good phrasing you called them the We Believe team, and I thought that was really nicely and eloquently stated. And that was done well. And then I appreciated your plug for Ethos as to why you're an unbiased source for the Warriors' greatness. I thought that was really funny, and I really enjoyed listening to that. So overall, great job, and I'm very much looking forward to your next one.
Awesome. Thank you, Zaina, for the feedback.
Our next evaluator. Wait a minute. Sorry, I lost my sign-up sheet. Our next evaluator is Wai Ming, who will be evaluating Georgie.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests, and especially Georgie. Georgie, very good speech on a book review, essentially, of this particular book that talks about money by the guy named Jacob Goldstein. So very good. And you know, as usual, you whenever you speak, you come across as authoritative, and you speak in slow or good enough pace that we can understand what's going on, and it's very clear. So all very good. In fact, this time you use slides like previous times, but you have significant improvements from my perspective because you use pictures. No longer all these long bullets, which is very good from my perspective. Yeah, so you know, different people might have different things. Some people might want lots of bullets, but I cannot be more fulsome in communicating how enthusiastic I am about you using lots of pictures. So the pictures are very good from my perspective. Some feedbacks in terms of the speech. I felt this particular speech seems to have lots of snapshots of stuff. You know, you talk about different jargons like fiat money and store value, which maybe you want to explain. And you took a snapshot of, oh, money came from China. I'm not sure that that's true, and all that stuff. And also you talk about Song Dynasty, which is hard to reference for most people when that was. Maybe it's better to talk about what year that was. And then you talk about Genghis Khan and Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the executive order. So lots of different pieces of stuff, very interesting. And I guess there's some organization to it, but maybe it's better to talk about having a structure first, describing what you're going to be talking about. You're going to talk about the various forms of money, and then leading to Bitcoin and why that is important. And all this stuff is made up by people, which you said at the beginning, but maybe re-emphasizing that, and making up by people for some purpose. And maybe you want to convey what that purpose is. The purpose is for us to somehow exchange things and save some value or something. So otherwise, very good speech. And at the end, you have this recommendation that we should read the book. So a call for action, I think usually is more effective if there's some emotion involved. It's like, you should read this book because it's going to help you make that much more money or something. Otherwise, I don't know, it's a good book. But overall, very good speech. I would look forward to more speeches and more pictures from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Wei Ming. Our next evaluator is
It's me.
going to be Gautam, who will be evaluating Elvira. Go ahead, Gautam.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Elvira, for sharing your great speech today. And this is your first speech in this club. It was really great. Great to see and hear your stories and your personal perspective. That was a very good one. And you started with very good introduction of why you are giving this speech and what is the objective that set up a stage for you and make yourself very comfortable. And that's a really a good move. And you also made it more interactive by asking people questions so that audience will be aware of what you are going to talk, and they will be like more engaged towards your speech. That was also really a very good move. That's a very well done. And you however there are some, I feel there is some improvement, such as like from your, I mean, when we give a speech in the online, we have to capture our emotions, capture our thoughts, and capture how we interact with the people. Like, so your camera is projected towards up and we cannot see your gestures. So I felt you used your gestures very well, but most of them is truncated. I would really encourage you to like go back and watch your speech and see how your speech is truncated. So instead I would say like, okay, I would have like stand up and give a speech. So that would be like, I'll be on my projection and the camera is like, it's going to be the same. So that would be like more connected. And also I felt like, since it's your own stories, I felt like the eye contact were missing, because I felt you were reading some notes. So like you can come up with your own stories, and you can cook up the stories if you forget some of the points. So that would also like would be really helpful when we forget some points. That's generally I used to do. Like, I just try to keep what's the three important point I want to communicate to my audience. And if I forget anything, like, try to have some backup and cook the stories on the fly. So that would be like more comfortable and more connected to the audience. So when we lose the connection, so that's where the speech will go in a different direction. So we should not lose the connection to the audience. But you handle it very well, except the gestures and the eye contact that were missing. But the stories, when you add your personal perspective of connecting dots, that's also a really good one. When you share, when we share a personal stories, audience will be connected towards, okay, what's next. So the curiosity will come, and that will make the audience like keep connected and not losing anything. So that it's really hard to uh, follow that when we are talking about personal stories. And also you showed some vocal variety that was really good. However, you could add more vocal varieties. And I don't know, like, this is from my personal perspective. I felt like you need some rehearsal, so that, like, just watch your videos and give a speech, watch the speech and make some changes. I would really encourage you to give the same speech again with the changes. That's really very well done. And overall, it was a great speech. I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam. That was a great speech, great evaluation. So I'm going to now return control to our Toastmaster.
Yes, thank you, Arun. Thank you, General Evaluator. We now go to our 1 to 2 minute impromptu speeches. And for that, we have our table topics. Table topics will be Zanya. Take it away, Zanya. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. So there's this something that's been sitting in the back of my mind since I've joined this Toastmasters. And it's that this Toastmasters is organized around the idea of startups. And I've realized that I have absolutely no idea what any of the rest of your startups might be. And so today I would like to ask the question to everybody. If you are running a startup successfully, what is it? If you someday hope to be running a startup successfully, what is your grand idea? And if you're not intending to run a startup at all, what do you wish somebody would put into the world for you to use as a consumer? Jose, do you want to go first? Calling you out.
Sure, I'll take it. So, the idea of startups is something that was secondary when I joined the club. But as it's progressing, it was a progressing as I was making my speeches. I thought of it. I thought, well, I'm currently an engineer, so I'm very, very busy with what I'm doing. But there's something else I do want to do, and it's basically counseling, right? I'm actually a hypnotherapist. I did mention it one time. I am trained for that, and I've had clients already, so I do know that. And some of my speeches reflect that. some of the concepts that I use. So in that sense, it is in a line of startup speakers is part of me, and what I do present is a startup, kind of in that sense, right? In terms of helping people with their lives, and so my feedback in terms of being from going from engineer to actually helping people with their lives is actually very interesting. There's a little bit of right brain, left brain. It kind of helps both sides of my brain. I noticed that there's a little bit of, it's nice to have another thing going on. So I highly encourage it. Thank you.
We have another volunteer. Oh, yes, Tamim.
Yeah, I love that question because when I signed up for startup speakers back then, that was all I was about. And I joined the club, and I had the assumption that everybody in the club will be like from the TV series Silicon Valley. And I came to the club and I found all those wonderful and lovely people, which had nothing to do with whatever I saw on TV, which was lovely. And it was for me to see, actually, to dive into the club and to see what the club is. And then slowly I was picking up that some of those members were actually were working in startups. But my initial thought about getting to startup speakers was also because really I want to do a startup. And in my I had a previous company which was like all about education, was an online flashcard trainer. But that didn't go well from a business perspective. That thing is still out there. We were still working on it at some point in time. But what I really want to do is, and that's something I've seen now with my daughter being in an online school and seeing how all the learning is actually shifting through different channels nowadays. I would love to build the school in the cloud. That's what I really want to do. I do really believe that whatever we have right now as schools and universities is going to go away. It's not going to be like, I don't believe that children will go to schools as we do today in 50 years from now. That will be different. And I think also all the big names that we have, maybe Harvard, Stanford, also, those will definitely change in their nature. And learning will be more personalized. Everybody will have their learning path they will go through, and things will become very, very different. And I think that's a good thing, because we humans have different capabilities. We have different strengths, and putting everyone into the same kind of box, I don't think that's really helping the development of that individual. So my goal would be to have a school which is for lifelong learning, which makes it possible to connect those who want to learn one thing with the others, to have their curriculum designed through that, through that school or through that application, and prosper as human beings. And I would love to have that, or be part of it and build a platform around that. So that's what I want to do.
Thank you, Tamim. That's fascinating. And I hope it has a fulsome acceptance in the world, because I would love to get a master's degree online, let me tell you. All right, who's next? Who's up? Wei Ming.
Okay. Like everybody, I came to Startup Speaker looking for people who do startups, but most of the people don't do that. Because, you know why? Because if you're a startup, you won't have time to go to Toastmasters. That's what I'm gathering, because frankly, people who start up is very limited in terms of resources and certainly time. And if you want to ramp up from zero to something, that's going to take a lot of effort. And I'm sorry, there's not much time for Toastmasters. You better be ready, though. And so in some sense, this club or Toastmaster is a good starting point if you are not already a good speaker. I wasn't a very good speaker. To you have to be a good speaker, because part of the key thing to start up is to be able to sell whatever you have and generate money. And in order to sell, you have to be a good communicator, in addition to be able to have emotional intelligence, all these other things. So very important. So this is a good first step. This club or clubs like this and morning club is very good to getting to startup. And there are a lot of opportunities. My recommendation, and as part of the preparation to a startup, is if you haven't read it, consider reading the book by Peter Thiel, 0 to 1. Has interesting advice in there. It might be a controversial person, but the book has good content. In that case, I highly recommend everyone here to continue to their effort, and it's very fulsome that we are here. Mr. and Miss Toastmaster.
Thank you, Wang Ping. I appreciated that. I haven't heard of that book, so I'll have to check it out. Who's up next?
I can go, Zaina.
Fantastic.
All right. So I didn't join what's it called? Startup Speakers to make a startup, to be completely honest. I just came to meet cool people and try to become a better speaker. And I chose Startup Speakers because I figured it's like, oh, all these people are trying to start startups. They're probably really intelligent, really well spoken. So you guys meet all that criteria, and that's why I'm here. But for me, it's like, Zaina, you posed a question on what I would like to see as like a startup invention. And so for all you engineers out there, I would really appreciate and love if you guys could make a teleporting machine. As far-fetched as that is, I don't know if that's physically possible, through the quantum physics or whatever, but how amazing would it be is if you could just teleport right now from here to Hawaii during your morning break, your lunch break. You can skip commute. I can go to my girlfriend's house without having to drive 30 minutes away. That would just be amazing. It's just like my life would be so much better. I wouldn't have to, it's like I could go to Apple and not, and like during lunchtime, just come back home, hang out, play video games with my brother, and then just go back when we go back to the office. And so super far-fetched idea, but I'm an accountant. I can't create those things, but if you need an accountant or financier, I'll definitely fund you guys and invest and work on the books to make the revenue numbers look good. Thanks.
I also wish for a teleportation machine. So I'd like to upvote that one. All right, who's next? We got Haroon, Elvira, and Gautam left. Elvira.
Well, as I told in my project today, in my speech, that one of my childhood dream was becoming an engineer, and I gave up after the university. And now actually one of my future projects is, in fact, to get back to engineering. I do love to do my work. I mean, doing my counting work at the same time. Speaking of transportation, teleporting machine, as far as I know, Elon Musk is working on actually one of his project is on not transportation. I mean, instant, like in 1 second or in no time, but he does work on the project of transporting people within half an hour from any point on Earth to another. It's probably you know about it. It'll be great for me to become of this project, or a bit smaller project for me is to do some home building some stuff, because I do love to get my fingers and in dirt. I'm not quite sure if my English is correct. To do manual work, to collect, assemble the things, to do 3D imaging of things, and try to make a prototype out of it. So it's my future project. Hopefully I will one day fulfill it and make it fulsome. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Dana.
Thank you. I have full faith you're going to get there someday. All
You go
right.
next.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Zaina, for the topic. So I'm looking forward to the Neuralink project to be successful and tested on human. So the Neuralink project objective is to read human brains and modify the memories. Basically, imagine your brain is the hard disk. You can go and write any file, you can delete any file, you can read anything. So if that is possible, so I see the enormous, it's going to be a fulsome experience to everyone from the medical perspective, from the health wise. So that's going to be a huge impact to the community. For example, people who have a paralysis, the brain cells fail to activate. So we can go and edit those brain cells. We can bring the life back to the real world. Similarly, when we filled with bad memories, you can just go to the shop, get it fixed in 5 minutes, and you'll be happy with that. And you can't even go back with all the bad memories. And you feel like low, just take a shot. You will be like high energy. So everything, all the emotions can be controlled with the brain cells. If that technology comes up in a real world, we are going to make changes and make everyone happy. At the same time, I hope the technology will not be used against human. I'm looking forward to that.
I also hope that.
You're scaring me, man.
Okay.
Haroon?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Zaina. That's an interesting question. I heard all of your responses and I wasn't very sure of how to respond to it, but I think I'm gonna take a stab on it now.
Mm.
So I started with Startup Speakers back in 2014, and I got introduced to it because my boss, who was working at the startup, who hired me and was previous manager at the company prior to me joining that, was in the same building as Startup Speakers, and he told me, "Hey, go down, join these people. They're actually your speaking is going to improve dramatically." And I said, "Fine," and that's how I got introduced to the club. Now, since 2014, around about to 2020, I was associated with startups, never founding anything, but working for various startups. The first startup that I worked for that I mentioned was called Health Expense, and it collapsed in a spectacular fashion. I mean, that's a story that maybe I'll tell you another time. And then after that, I was associated with startups for a year or so, between 3 different startups. So finally, in 2020, I kind of got burnt out of the whole thing, the startup thing. And the truth is that startups are not really, I've come to the conclusion that startups are not really about the product. It's about the business that you design. And frankly, if you don't have the right business, startups don't generally work. And there's a very, very low likelihood of them succeeding. So my forte was in engineering and in science, and I thought that I should just stick to it. And so frankly, unfortunately, I decided to leave my startup dreams. I put them in sort of in a box right now and sort of joined an established company. A few months ago, I joined Autodesk, and that's where I am. And I'm finding the lifestyle actually to be pretty healthy and conducive to my mental peace. So for me, Startup Speakers is it's a great dream, but it's not really about the product. It's about the business you want to build in. And if that's something that suits you, hey, more power to you. But for now, I'm kind of out of that business, and I think for the next maybe a year or two, I don't see myself going back to it. So there you go. That's my take on them.
Haroon, I'm going to hold you accountable to telling us that story. I'm very interested now. Georgie, do you want to go?
Sure. Okay. So with respect to startup speakers, I knew the people who were founding the club, and I'd always done speech and debate in school, and I always enjoyed giving speeches, and I figured this was a good way to keep up with my speaking abilities. So I started with the club a few months after it started. The concept with startup speakers obviously is that we were meeting at Plug and Play back in the olden days when we used to meet face to face. And the Plug and Play is a pretty amazing facility. It's you're constantly surrounded by startups and that whole startup energy. And while they are trying to keep that going, there are events online. For example, they have a lot of what they call incubators. They're trying to incubate startups. And so every 3 to 6 months or so, they'll do these events in which they have a bunch of companies that have come up through their incubators, give presentations to see how far they've gotten. And I've been watching a few of them virtually. There'll be one coming up for the fashion tech industry that's out of their Paris branch, taking place the next few weeks. And they got another one for Munich coming up. So even though you're not necessarily there anymore, they still are trying to get the same energy going. I don't find it's quite working. The whole transportation to another place, that teleportation, I think that would be great when we can actually start meeting one another face to face again, because quite honestly, I've been trying to attend a lot of these events. Like, for example, there's a 3D printing event I'm going to be attending virtually this afternoon. And I'm because I'm interested in that industry. But the concept is there's just something that's kind of missing with some of these virtual meetings. And it's just not quite working, especially with respect to startups. Maybe you guys have had a different impression to the meetings you've been going to. Something like startup speakers seems to work okay, but for the startups, the concept of selling the concept, or as Harun would say, selling the business concept, it just isn't coming across very well. And I'm looking forward really to getting back face to face, because otherwise I think we're going to be losing quite a bit otherwise.
Thank you, Georgie. I gotta tell you, I had my money on you running a personal finance startup. I was ready for it. Well, fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, yes. I thought Jose had a thought there. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
For
Everybody,
your thoughts.
everybody's got it.
I'm just gonna pass back to Jose.
Thank you. Everybody's got it in. So I'll have the general evaluator Harun take over for the duty managers. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, General Mr. Toastmaster. I think that's now we're going to call on the duty masters. And our first duty master was the timer. Wai-Ming, go ahead. Tell us how we did it on time.
Yes, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, I cannot be more fulsome in communicating how everyone is almost on time. So in the prepared speeches, Louis spoke for 6 minutes and 20 seconds, Georgie 7:30, myself, or not myself, Ivara 5:50, and then in the evaluation, Zena spoke for 2:52, myself 3:01, Gautam 3:21. In the table topics, Jose 1:26, Tamim 2:56, myself 1:52, Louis 1:35, Elvira 1:50, Gautam 1:32, Harun 2:38, and Georgie 2:48. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Wai-Ming. Our next duty master was Gautam. And please give us a fulsome report on how we did on the word map, on the word.
Thank you, General Evaluator. So the word of the day is today's fulsome. It was, I think, most of us used. Myself, Jose, Harun, Elvira, Wai-Ming. I'm sorry if I missed anyone, but it was a good one that everyone is using it. Thank you. And I'll be the accounter, so I'd like to give the report as well. I see that we have very few hours used. Most of them never crossed more than 6 or 7. So everyone, like the minimum is 1, maximum is 5. I'm really glad that the number of hours is getting reduced in the coming weeks. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Wai Ming, do you have a joke for us?
Yes. So this local bar was so sure that the bartender is the strongest man around. They offer a standing $1,000 bet that he's the strongest. So how did they prove that? They said he can take a lemon and squeeze it, and then squeeze it, and all the juice comes out. And then he can hand out that lemon to someone else. If someone could squeeze one more drop, that person would be stronger. So lots of people came by to try, weightlifters, longshoremen, all types of people. Nobody could do it. And then one day, this tiny little guy came in wearing thick glasses, polyester suit, came in a squeaky voice and said, "I can do it." And then, so the bartender took the lemon, squeezed everything, and then gave him the lemon. The tiny little man puts his hand around the lemon, very tiny hand, squeeze, 6 drops comes out, 6 drops. So he got the $1,000. And then the bartender asked him, what do you do for a living? Are you a lumberjack, a weightlifter, whatever? The man replied, I work for the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Yep. I just recently went through that experience with submitting my taxes last month. Yeah, on the 17th of May, just before the 17th of May. Anyway, this was as general evaluator, I'm going to do the evaluation for the meeting. I thought that this meeting went really well. I enjoyed it a lot. I had a great, the speeches covered a number of areas that I'm interested in. So Louis talked about basketball. I really admired the way his enthusiasm was so palpable in his speech. And one of the things that pointed out is that Zaina really captured that feeling in her evaluation. With Georgie, great summary of a book of an important topic. I thought that was really well done. There's one thing that I would want to say. I noticed that there is a trend during your speech where money is all diffused and disorganized, and then it gets consolidated. And now we see the same thing happening with cryptocurrency. And I think that might have actually made a unifying theme in your speech. So you might want to consider that in any subsequent speech or topic when you re-explore it. And of course, Elvira's speech was so great. And what I really liked about it was how she connected her personal story with the broader events that were happening when she was back in the USSR. And I thought that was really well done. The table topics was really well, got a lot of insights into a lot of people's thinking. That was great. And thank you for bringing up such a great topic, Zaina. All in all, a really enjoyable 90 minutes, and I hope to see the same kind of energy. I mean, I see that every day, but hey, next week, let's keep this going. Well, thank you. So now I'm going to turn over to our president, who happens to be me.
Maybe we could get
there's one
Zaina's.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get Zaina's grammarian report in real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Zaina, please go. And
Things that I saw today, Louis, I think, had some fantastic vocabulary, commendable, tenacious. I really appreciated that. Elvira, I liked your phrase, when we are challenged, we have the opportunity to connect the dots. And that was really nicely done. One thing you said is, I told in my speech today. Rather, it should have been, as I said in my speech today. So just a little bit of conjugation of that word there. For Wai Ming, you had some feedbacks in terms of the speech. It should have been some feedback, singular, in terms of the speech. For Gautam, most of them is truncated, is what you said in regards to Elvira's gestures. generally them and is don't match. So most of them are truncated, or it is truncated, one of the two. You did something similar again when you said, what's the 3 points I want to communicate? What's is a conjunction for what is the 3 points. Since you're referencing multiple points, what are the 3 points would be more proper English. But I really liked your phrase, cook up some stories. I thought that was really clever and I liked that. So thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. So now I'm going to return control to our president, and please vote. I sent out the link a few minutes ago. We've just got 4 votes. So anybody else wants to vote? Otherwise, I'm going to go with.
Why don't we do roles for next week, and I'll give people a chance to submit anything they might want to do.
Okay. Do we want to do any roles? Sure. Do any volunteers for Toastmaster? Toastmaster. Let me see my own schedule. I can be Toastmaster next week. So I'll be Toastmasters for next week. Does anybody want to be a speaker? I need speakers.
I'd like to be.
Sorry?
I would love to be a speaker.
Okay. Speaker. Anybody else?
And I'm signed up as a speaker. It looks like Jose is signed up as a speaker.
I'm signed up.
Okay. And we need an evaluator.
I can be evaluator.
Okay. So Georgie, can you evaluate Zaina?
Sure.
Okay, and evaluator for Jose. I need a volunteer. Alvara, thank you. Anybody else? Speaker 3. Okay. Thanks, Louis. Okay. So I think we've got this
Table topics.
Yeah, table topics.
Looks like Hannah signed up as table topics.
Is she? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. And we got a full plate.
Yep, we do. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Let me go ahead and announce our winners. So first, for top table topic speaker, drum roll, please. It's me.
Yay.
Our best evaluator for this week was, drum roll, please, Zaina. And for our best speaker today was Louis. Congratulations. Well, thank you. Well done, everybody. Well, thank you. With that, I'm going to conclude our this week's meeting. So please feel free to hang out. I'm going to stop the recording.